Before The Simpsons made it big, another dysfunctional family came crashing onto BBC Two in 1990, led by an unlikely hero for our times.
He was a loser, but he wasn't defeated.
You talking to me?
It just so happens to be set in Glasgow, but this is every man.
I will skive, and skive again to save the lifestyle I love.
He was a magnificent rebel.
What's his name again? He's a man that thinks. He is a man who has opinions on the world.
I was just actually sitting there contemplating the wondrous bounty of nature while scratching my arse with a knitting needle.
Born out of a series of happy accidents, Rabsy Nesbitt came into the world and thrived against the odds of a star not wanting the role.
And he said, try again. I said, oh, do we have to?
Quick, you're on time.
A question mark over viewers actually understanding it.
I felt it would be absolutely out of the question to subtitle it.
I'm no half missing a podger.
And the death of a cast member.
It was a huge tragedy for him.
Yet it survived 13 years, and with over 5 million viewers identifying with this grubby working-class philosopher, Rabsy Nesbitt made an indelible mark, albeit a skid mark.
One night, lasted 3 days. She sent me out for a pan of sausage for a tea. I meet a wee mate. Next thing you know, it's Thursday.
But Rab might never have graced TV screens at all if his creator, the unknown writer Ian Patterson, had given up after being stood up at a meeting scheduled with BBC Scotland's head of light entertainment, Sean Hardy.
I ended up instructing him to meet me, I think it was third cubicle from the left in the gents' toilet of the Botanic Gardens, just as a penance. And to be fair, the man turned up. We were later arrested, but we don't talk about that.
But the rendezvous worked. Hardy hired Patterson, and he was taken under the wing of producer Colin Gilbert. He started working with Patterson on A Kick Up the 80s before they both went on to Laugh, I Nearly Paid My Licence Fee and Naked Video, which featured the first Rab sketch written after uninvited New Year's guests turned up at Patterson's house.
Ian nicked upstairs to the bedroom and said to his wife, just say I'm in Glasgow. And you're not having a party or anything like that. So the neighbours came to the door to wish him a Happy New Year, and Myra says, oh, he's in Glasgow. And they said, oh, well, we'll just come in and keep you company.
As far as I'm concerned, it came out of a monologue that I wrote one New Year's Eve, because I was bored.
He just sat there and quietly sort of like seethed and put all this down on paper.
I just wrote this thing in Scottish dialect, and it must have taken about 15 minutes.
The character became famous for much longer than 15 minutes, but then he was simply called Man with a Bandage. What's more, the actor who would play Rab didn't want to do it at all.
I wasn't keen on it because I thought, oh, here we go, let's, bash the west of Scotland, and what a lot of drunks and ne'er-do-wells live therein again.
Gregor Fisher had first met Colin Gilbert on the BBC Scotland drama Rob Roy, and then again when Gilbert was script editing on comedy show Scotch and Rye. Fisher had appeared in serious film roles, including Michael Radford's 1984, but was now back in Scotland again, paying the bills by doing comedy on BBC Two's Naked Video, home to Patterson's Man with a Bandage sketch.
When I had written it, I thought, I hope Gregor gets this to do. But I had no way of affecting that.
Whoever wasn't doing the sketch that was scheduled would be given the vox pop to go and learn in half an hour, and then we would try and shoot it.
The thing went round the bus, the filming bus, because nobody wanted to have to learn a monologue just as we're about to break off at the end of the day.
And we're all kind of looking away, and he selected Gregor.
Mr. Gilbert was paying the money at that time, and, he didn't force me into it, but he said, there's more to this than meets the eye. Try it.
So Gregor said, well, it's a drunk. I've read it's a drunk. And we haven't got a costume because we've used other costumes in the van out for the day. So he went back in and he came back and he said, there's a pinstripe suit here. And Gregor says, he's a drunk. He's not a businessman. And it's now a contest of wills, actually. Well, Colin says, well, we can dirty it down and he'll have bought it out of Oxfam.
So we did it, and it was dark, and it was, just let's get through this and get home. This will never see the light of day. It stinks. So there's already a bit of aggression in there. And I've never been a man that's liked being forced into anything. So I was gurney. And we did it, and we went home.
Listen, I'll tell you. The trouble with this Tory government is what they're doing to people like me, and there you are. See people like him, see people like me. It's OTT all together, yeah.
Fisher was still convinced it stank when he went to a screening of the sketch.
And Gregor was sitting next to me saying, I told you, I told him it wouldn't get a laugh, it wouldn't get a laugh. And then one line came out.
They're all a lot of jumped up fascist bastards, that's what they are. I'll tell you something else, son, I should know, for I was an inspector in the buses.
That got a huge laugh, and that was enough to keep it back in.
In the end, it was worth it because, you know, hey-ho, bought my big house in the Borders.
The man with the bandage now had a name, and Rab C. Nesbitt's attitude came from Ian Patterson's upbringing in working-class Govan.
If you come from a kind of working-class background, there's no precedent for success. You know, it was kind of like coming out of the closet, you know, and Dad, I want to be a writer, you know. It would have been easier to say I'm gay, you know.
There was an inherent truth in Nesbitt. A lot of the stuff that he was writing about he had seen or he'd heard about and that sort of thing. I mean, he was good at, you know, observing situations and taking wee stories that people had, and so it was all based in reality.
Coming from Govan, I would see things around me, and you know, gradually that in later life fed into what I was writing. And I would see guys around who, for example, on a Saturday afternoon, they wouldn't be wearing a shirt, they'd be wearing a vest, and the reason was they were keeping their shirt clean for going out on a Saturday night.
Stuff it a lot, I want nothing more to do, I want nothing for you. Nothing.
Patterson's inspiration was Govan, but how about Gregor's?
Could you see your light clear to lend him 23 pence for my best pair of hair?
It's a whole collection of things. There used to be a guy in Central Station in Glasgow with dreadlocks, and he used to be always raking through the bins. And there's that really sharp, wisecracking, put-down kind of thing.
I got my beer at Agnew's, my fags at Presto's, and my stitches at Southern General.
I'm sure there's a bit of my dad in there, who was a lovely man, but, you know, he was tricky. So I suppose it's all that. It's a bit of Patterson, it's a bit of Gilbert, it's a bit of... it can sometimes be a bit of what happened to you on the way into work that day.
After his initial reluctance to play Rab, the aggression mixed with warmth that Gregor brought to the character was becoming popular with the Naked Video audience. Phil Differ thought they could use him as a linking device on a Naked Video Christmas special.
I do remember suggesting that because I had called it, you know, Rab C. Nesbitt's Christmas Hampered, and when they put it to Ian, and Ian made it Rab C. Nesbitt's Seasonal Greet, which is a much better title, apart from that.
But at that point, Ian decided that if we were going to be doing something like that, you know, he'd created the character, he would like to take responsibility for writing the whole piece. And it wasn't going to be a sketch show, it was going to be more of a sitcom.
This was despite Patterson and Gilbert's unnerving experience 6 months earlier with the pilot for a Nesbitt-esque show called DOS.
I have a heavy schedule today, no danger.
Oh, aye. Doing what?
Well, let's see. At 11 o'clock, I'm due in the park to sit around brooding about my past. Then at 3 o'clock, I've to get up the tune to stoat about, cursing and swearing at total strangers.
It was thought to be unshowable, that is, until now. But there was to be a couple of important differences between DOS and Seasonal Greet.
We had actually booked the crew to do a sort of mockumentary about Christmas, so it was a single camera crew, and there was nothing we could do about that. We had to go out and shoot the sitcom with a single camera crew rather than do it in front of an audience in the studio, which is what we probably would have done at the time had it been commissioned as a sitcom. As it happened, that worked rather well for the way that the show looked.
By accident, Patterson and Gilbert had conjured a sitcom pilot out of the Naked Video special. It being the season of goodwill, Patterson gave Rab a backhanded gift, his family.
Where's my dinner, Mary, honey?
Why not put it in? Well, you must not be getting any bloody dinner then,
Elaine C. Smith was a former stage actress whose own career had taken off after joining Naked Video. Among other characters, she'd played an unnamed Mary type in some Ian Patterson monologues. He decided to marry 2 of his favourite characters.
We were separate all the way through Naked Video until there was one sketch where he was put in.
Hey, Mary, get your ass in here a wee minute, hen.
I'm not. What is it? Is that you?
That's me, hen. That is me. It's official. That is me. Pure mental.
Pure mental. Oh, Rab, I'm not pleased.
At that time, it was all a little bit kind of un-PC, is that Mary usually appeared with a black eye, and the sort of implication that Rab was somebody who sort of knocked her about a bit.
I'm afraid, Mrs. Nesbitt, your husband is a psychopath.
Do you hear that, Rab? A psychopath?
Yeah. It's amazing what you can do when you put your mind to it.
It might have been funny in that first sketch, you could get away with it, but if she permanently had a black eye, I said that for me, the thing that was going to be funny about the two of them was she was as apt to give him a black eye as he was with her. If she was a doormat and downtrodden, then there's not a lot of comedy there.
Besides the wife, Rab needed a couple of Waynes to make the family complete, lead dysfunctional.
This is with two boys, Gash and Bernie. A lot of folks say that Bernie takes after his father, but I can't see it myself.
After appearing with Elaine C. Smith in the sitcom City Lights, Andrew Fairley was cast as the eldest Nesbitt offspring, Gash. Eric Cullen was tailor-made for Bernie after a memorable role as a Gorbals diehard in the TV adaptation of John Buchan's Hunting Tower.
Come here, son. I have a wee present for you.
Oh, great. Canada.
Go on, son, go on. You deserve it.
As soon as I clocked Eric, he was a cheeky wee bastard back then, and I thought, I'm going to write you cheeky wee bastard lines.
Stick your tips up your arse. Hey. Manners, please.
Andy always came across to me as being slightly kind of introverted and all that. He had an intellectual side. So I tried to quarry that neurotic side of Andy.
What the hell are you doing, by the way?
I'm working on my motivation, Dad.
Stick my toe up your crevice while I'm motivated.
With a load of new ingredients in the mix and a star turn from Fisher, Rab's seasonal greet avoided the fate of DOS and was a rating success, first in Scotland and then nationally a year later, when its BBC Two repeat attracted over 2 million viewers. Thoughts turned towards making a series, but would anyone in London take a gamble on a show with strong language, strong drink and even stronger accents?
I knew there was an element of risk, but at the same time, the BBC Two public had got used to naked video, so they knew the character.
London can take me as it finds me, idiot.
And also, I thought it was a risk worth taking, because I liked the show, I liked the character.
Yentob also risked alienating viewers south of the border who might struggle to understand the show.
Take the link, and I could leave it.
But there was no mood for compromise in Glasgow.
I should have taken it, I think.
We were talking about putting subtitles on it at one time, which was ridiculous and racist and insulting.
It's our language. We'll do what the bloody hell we want with it. Oh, steady you. We don't want any trouble here.
We watch Brookside and you watch EastEnders and that, you know. Audiences in Britain are quite sophisticated. I think we can manage accents now, you know.
What's wrong? Oh, Phoebe, it's my Wayne. I'm pure like Swam. He's shot the crawl, I'm up to high go. God knows what this is going.
I did have a woman come up to a very sort of posh lady who said to me, "Oh, I love your show." And I said, "Can I ask, you know, I don't mean to sound rude, but how do you understand it?" She said, "Oh, darling, I watch it on CFAX." So she got the subtitles.
Yentob decided to speak a language BBC Scotland would understand and agreed to pay for 3 of the 6 episodes. An unusual step, but one that spread the risk if the show bombed in front of a UK-wide audience.
I'm trying to get to Sidcup, no. Your wife's cousin's going to grease a billet there and that, so I'm wanting to know how to get there and that, no. What?
As I understand it, the night before the show was first transmitted, there was a nervous phone call from Alan Yentob to Colin Gilbert saying, you know, are you sure this is going to work? Because we all knew it was a bit different. You know, I was relaxed because I had nothing to lose.
I'm sorry, I can't understand what you're saying.
There were people in the BBC in presentation who thought it was unintelligible and who felt that I'd given it a slot that was too prominent right in the heart of the schedule, because I put it out at 9 o'clock. But I sort of believed in it, and I felt anyway that's what BBC Two was there to do.
BBC Two started showing Rab C. Nesbitt in September 1990. Episode 1 attracted nearly 6 million viewers. Yentob's calculated risk had paid off, and worries about accents and the show's setting evaporated in the heat of nationwide popularity. Even its reluctant star was surprised by its success.
If anybody tells you they weren't, they're lying. They've got to be liars. I mean, who would have thought it?
You and I understand each other, Ram, because we're scum. And I may say that as scum, in my estimation, you float right to the top of the sump.
Thank you very much, Jim.
The character of Rab appealed to all kinds of people. Of course, it was from a working-class situation, but he was, unlike Alf Garnett, he had things to say which were meaningful and which were enlightening, even.
Your country's like your own fizzer, isn't it? I mean, it might be a pockmarked, drink-ridden eyesore, but I mean, you're stuck with it, aren't you?
Rab C. Nesbitt is an everyman character, but not a character you would want to meet on the bus going home at closing time.
Which one of you lucky people am I going to embarrass the hell out of by sitting beside you?
It was a great reminder to people that there was a whole other strata of society that was being completely forgotten about. And by the way, they weren't stupid.
We kid ourselves on, we've got free will. But we've only got the free will to do what our upbringing tells us to do.
If it had been a flat cardboard cutout of a character, here we are. This is your archetypal Glasgow Egypt. Then, you know, it wouldn't have worked, would it? People just change the channel, wouldn't they? I would.
The viewers didn't change channel, as Patterson's writing and Fisher's acting struck a chord with the nation.
Well, Dad, what happened? How did you go into the job shop?
Bad news, son. I got a job.
What is interesting is what is presented out front and what people think they see. And I think that's what both Gregor and Ian brought to Rabsy, was that look at this inner life.
Gregor brought a tremendous humanity to the character, to Rab. Gregor's a brilliant actor. That's the bottom line here.
The last of the props is knocked away for your life. Wife, father, mother.
I think a lot of actors may have saw him as a bit like Begbie, say, from Trainspotting, you know, and maybe played it like that. But Gregor saw through that, he saw between the lines.
Despite Rab's appeal around the country, there was one city in Britain where, strangely enough, he wasn't so popular.
Nesbitt came out just at the same time as Glasgow had been made European City of Culture. So there's an irony.
Hey, Jimmy! City of Culture and that. Got to give 10 pence for a cappuccino.
We became the most visible representation of Glasgow. And some people get very nervous about the way Scots are depicted.
I was sitting in my van one day and some real Glasgow gentleman who had one or two sherbets too many started hitting the side of the van and saying, "You're giving this place a bad name, by the way." Do you realise how ironic you're being, sir?
Rab's lack of pretension punctured Glasgow's aspirations, but there were some city fathers who didn't get the joke. One in particular, Glasgow Tory councillor John Young, called for the show to be taken off the air.
We are trying to attract people into this city, we're trying to attract new jobs in firms and so on. And if I were a person sitting in Portsmouth, for example, and I thought, is this an image of Glasgow?
To say that it was bad for Glasgow and bad for Scotland, what do you want to do with that kind of people who live that lifestyle? You know, build a wall and hide them behind it and say these people don't exist. You know, Scotland isn't like that.
It's your official subculture tours. See the Glasgow nobody knows. Come with me to a magical world of summonses, mutton pies, and knocked off gyro checks.
I don't look at Steptoe and Son and think, well, everybody in London must be a scrap metal dealer, or I look at Alf and think, well, everybody in the whole of England is a bigot. I mean, why would you think those things? You know, give us some credit, for God's sake.
Besides pressure from local politicians, filming itself could be an uncomfortable experience for the man who was Rab.
It was all shot in the winter. Lashing rain and a string vest with your nipples at a 45-degree angle, and they're painful. You know, it's that kind of rub.
Get up! What are you doing creeping about in your wife fronts for?
I got one of those sprays at one point. You know those for breastfeeding women? They spray it. Didn't make a blind bit of difference. I know what it's like, girls. I have been there.
The Rab likeability factor was helped by his sidekick and unscrupulous best pal, Jamesy Cotter.
I will tell you something. And check thoughts, I'll tell you nothing.
Tony Roper's former job in the shipyards couldn't have been more different from his first film part in The Wicker Man, the 70s cult horror which also featured Barbara Rafferty, his future screen wife Ella Cotter. Roper's career continued in Scotch and Rye and Naked Video, where his Jamesy character first appeared.
It was awful lucky, Doctor. Stuck in his brain. And then slowly could have lost an eye there, you know.
The thing about Mary and Rab is they're both the same, really. They're bluff and honest. So you're looking for counterpoints in their best pals.
Marvellous for her age, ain't she, Mr. Cotter? You know, people often mistake us for sisters.
All right. You sure you're not just taking a piss?
Same old James.
He has no saving grace whatsoever. The man has no backbone, no spine. He'd sell his granny for anything at all. And he would screw the crack of dawn if he got a chance at it. He was so non-PC, and I'm a bit like that as well, and I got some of that out of my system.
Mary, darling, it's me, Sneak Hips Cotter. Don't bother opening the door. I'll slither under the gap.
From school, he'd always quite fancied Mary, but Mary only ever had eyes for Rab. His own marriage to Ella was that he had got, you know, third best or fourth best.
Right, I'm finished. You'll be the only man in government with 3 Adam's apples.
The tenement goddess Ella Cotter was the perfect foil for Mary.
With Mary, you've got a kind of warm person, so you're looking for something that's a wee bit colder, a bit more cynical to play Ella.
Your Rab's an honest, upright, decent individual. I mean, I'd rather sew up than sleep with him, but catch me. Does it all come down to sex, Ella? It does for me.
The crew, I always suspected that they really fancied Ella. I know they did. I mean, she used to wear low-cut blouses and all that, and she was up for it. You know, she was quite a dirty woman.
Are you all right, Ella? Can I get you anything?
Start with a dry pair of knickers. I mean, I could have got a lumber every night of the week if I'd gone out as Ella. No bother.
Perhaps the most memorable episode was when the Nesbitts won a holiday in Spain. Like millions of Brits abroad, their behaviour didn't change, it just became more so.
It's one of my favourites because, unlike a lot of sitcoms, when they take people out of their normal context and take them somewhere, you know, like the movie of Are You Being Served, where they all go to Spain and end up in the middle of some coup d'etat or something. It actually worked very well as a Rhapsody Nesbitt episode.
Does that mean you'll be going topless anymore?
Certainly not. It's bloody disgusting. Thank Christ for that.
Shut it, you wee spiny ya! You're such sexist. Your mother's got marvellous tits.
And in the everyman scene to end them all, Rab met his Spanish doppelganger.
The guy that we got was a photographer, one of the guys who takes pictures of pizzas and paellas that get stuck outside the restaurants, and he couldn't speak any English. He had to turn to Gregor when he saw him and say, bandage, bandage, point to this, but he kept saying, bandy, bandy.
Bandage, bandage, yeah? Bandage! Oh, amigo mío, ¿dónde estaba tu tío? You chela bastard! You chela bastard! Pero no te veo! Hand your clutch así, brother! Hand your clutch así! Adios!
It was like kind of improvising in that particular, and the light was fading. The light's always going. Isn't the light always going?
There's none that shows your face, Mayor. In human nature and meeting some poor bastard that's just as mad as yourself, yeah?
The first series was a bona fide hit, averaging over 5 million viewers and winning the Royal Television Society Best Sitcom Award. Alan Yentob's gamble paid off, and Rab had defied the odds, proving that a show set among the Scottish underclass could reach a wider audience.
It was a testament to Colin Gilbert as well, who believed that you could, you know, if Bristol had become famous for wildlife shows and David Attenborough, then why couldn't Glasgow be the comedy capital and all that?
Nesbitt was the kind of last flourish of the bold gamble by producers, you know. Damn it, I like the show, I'll do it. You don't get much of that these days. So we were quite lucky to come in on that wave.
Further proof that the show and the character had struck a chord with the nation came when Rab and company went on tour, selling out theatres up and down the country, not once, but twice.
Don't you stand there and insult my wins. No, because that's her job. Oh, shut it.
We went to the Hammersmith Odeon, capacity 4,500 or something, and there was ticket touts selling tickets, you know. It was phenomenal. It was just joy.
I found it absolutely, utterly terrifying. The best bit of doing that was the end of the show, and you went, "Thank you very much." I gotta go. Good night. Chin.
While Gregor found it tough on stage, tension was creeping in backstage too.
There'd be the odd friction. Because you're living together in a hotel, you're living in a bus. I mean, anybody, like any family, you're going to have a flout with one another.
In the 60s, these rock bands used to wreck hotel rooms. I used to think, what sort of kind of behaviour is that? That's a ridiculous way to behave, isn't it? I understand that. You grow to hate hotels with a passion.
So when a lucrative 7-week extension of the tour was proposed by promoter Phil McIntyre, Gregor decided he'd had enough of nylon sheets and cold toast.
I said, "Philip, no, I'm going home." "Oh," he said, "it's a good, you know, we'll up the money." I said, "You could give me all the money, Philip. I'm going home."
You've got to remember, he's carrying the brunt. He's the proud of the ship. And he's got all the work and all the basic. You know, if it doesn't work, it's probably people will blame him, no us, because it's called Rab C. Nesbitt. No Rab C. Nesbitt and the gang.
Back on home turf in Glasgow, Rab C. Nesbitt was proving to be a shot in the arm for Scottish acting talent. Multi-award-winning actor-director Peter Mullen and Ugly Betty star Ashley Jensen both got parts on the show. Not to mention the young David someone. David who?
Hey, Davey! Dave? Davina.
Yes. What can I get you, boys?
I remember looking at him and just thinking, it's not a bad little bird now.
No man could ever make me feel the way she makes me feel when she smiles at me.
Gonnie no stone quite so close to me.
With a success on their hands and Rab filming only 6 weeks a year, the team were in demand. Patterson wrote and Gilbert produced the low-life series Bad Boys and football comedy Atletico Partick. Gilbert produced a new version of The Tales of Parahandy, with Fisher in the title role. And over on ITV, they tried to take one of Phil Differ's characters from Naked Video and make him an icon like Rab.
I suppose I used to quite resent the Baldy Man because I always looked like an arse, you see. I seem to have cornered the market in arses.
Hamlet bought it and did it as an ad, and I think Colin and I made about £10 million each on that. You know, nah, I'm only kidding. If only.
With no dialogue, Fisher struggled to give the Baldy Man the depth he brought to Rab C.
Come on.
That winning humanity was put to the test in Series 6 when Patterson tackled probably the show's most contentious storyline.
You have a growth in your stomach.
A growth? What kind of growth?
A malignant growth. Mr. Nesbitt, I'm afraid you've got...
Cancer. Today is a good day for taste. And for shrugging off that mood of depression.
It was a heart sinker for me.
You all right, Rab?
None of your business.
Cancer's quite close to my heart. Most of my family have died of my cancer. My mother died of cancer. Blah, 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 blah. I thought it was a huge risk. And I thought we were using the goodwill that I thought we had to go somewhere where we really shouldn't.
Vomit, nausea, diarrhea. It's like Lager with the sing song, you know.
Although there was one or two letters, and I mean 1 or 2 letters from people who thought it was pretty shocking that we should be doing that. I got a huge mailbag from people who said the opposite.
I'd rather go now. Well, I still got my wits about me, you know, than end up doolally with rusks dribbling down my chin. And some wee camp male nurse with sensitive hands gives me 4 more bed baths a day than I actually need.
Rab C survived the Big C, but off-screen other issues threatened to overshadow the success of the show. Eric Cullen left at the end of Series 3 due to ill health and spent time in prison shortly after. While the Bernie character was put on hold, his place in the home was filled in Series 4 by David Mackay as Screech.
Is the waistband half full or is the waistband half empty? Yeah.
Half empty. Fiver says you're dead by Christmas. Terrible thing you say.
Yeah, it didn't work. It didn't work when we brought in Screech, and Davy Mackay did his absolute best with it, but it was a non-character. It was a running repair. You know, we had planned to bring Eric back.
After Cullen served his sentence, it was agreed Bernie would be written back into the next series.
We got the word he'll be delighted to come back, and I'll speak to him. He's having a minor operation at the moment, OK? The next day, the phone goes, and Gilbert takes the call, and he puts the phone down, his face is white. And what? Eric's just died on the operating table.
What transpired was much more difficult on a personal level than it was in a professional level.
On screen, Rab faced another of life's challenges. Mary was tiring of his scuzzy ways, and her thoughts strayed to Rab's best pal, Jamesy Cotter.
I love you. I've always loved you.
It was obviously a very weak moment for Mary to end up with the slither that was Jamesy Cotter.
You and Mary? Are you kidding?
We seem to be sitting on the settee together in the throes of love.
But steadfast and reliable Mary was never really going to desert lovable Rab for slimy Jamesy.
You happy?
No. You?
Yep. Better just get on it, I say, man.
Sounds fair to me.
They rub along, you know. I'm sure there are many moments when Mary wakes up in the morning and thinks, God, is he still here? And vice versa.
How would it be you, though?
Maybe they have each other and there's nothing else to be had. I don't know. Who else would have them? I don't know.
You didn't even realise I'd finished, did you?
I didn't realise you'd started. One of the things that always struck me about Rab and Mary was they actually did love each other. They actually stayed and they tried to work it out.
I love you because you understand, dear. Every little thing I try to do.
But after 8 series together, the cast and crew were thinking of life beyond Rab. The on-screen closeness and warmth wasn't being reflected off it.
Gregor was beginning to feel that thing of the actors always feel about, am I being typecast and all of that. So he was getting itchy feet, and I had started to go to London, and the feeling wasn't as good as it had been. And the intimations I was getting from on set were that, you know, maybe the energy's starting to go out of the show.
You put your hand up. It would look better. Really? Yeah. Okay.
I always knew in the end it would come down to whether Colin, Ian, Patterson or Gregor wanted to do it again, that I wouldn't have any say in it. And I always knew if I opened my mouth too much that, you know, the next series would start with Mary's funeral, episode 1.
Sure am, Rab.
Gregor was already thinking about whether he wanted to do it again. His performance had turned a sketch character into a household name, but he was starting to realise that Rab's success came at a price.
I suppose changing one of my children's nappies at Air Flower Show one day with this slight, you know, audience gathering, I thought, this is getting a bit odd.
Gregor was very keen to take up some kind of straight acting options, because he is a very good actor, and I think he felt that he was just going to be defined and remembered as Rab.
So, when at the end of the 8th series another dreaded theatre tour was planned, Gregor decided both to say no to the tour and that it was time to hang up the string vest he'd been so reluctant to put on 13 years earlier.
As a matter of fact, all of a sudden, I can't be asked.
Gregor phoned and said, you know, just out of respect for everybody, just to let you know, I'm, you know, out of it really. You know, I've had enough, and it's time to go, and I need to. And I was really glad that he'd done it that way, and I had total respect for his decision.
I'd knocked stuff back thinking we were going to do this tour. So he wasn't that popular with me for a wee while, because I thought, I'm left with no money here.
That show came along at a time where I had a young family, bills to be paid, and a marvellous opportunity. And, you know, as the man said, eat the ice cream when it's on your plate, which I did. But there was a price to pay.
He must have felt a lot of pressure, and I can understand why he wanted to cut it out, and probably right too.
Repeat after me. Life is piss.
It's artifice, it's make-believe. You know, more important things have happened in my life. And long may that be the case.
Ian Patterson moved south, following up Nesbitt with Breeze Block, a Newcastle set comedy for BBC Choice. In 2003, he wrote the all-black South London sitcom The Crouches for BBC One. Colin Gilbert produced Chewing the Fat, another sketch show which spun off into the sitcom Still Game, screened by BBC Two in 2005. His latest network comedy, Empty, reunites Gilbert with Gregor Fisher.
I don't care what you say anymore. This is my life. Go ahead with your own life and leave me alone.
Billy Joel?
Life after Rab for Gregor Fisher included playing Squeers in Nicholas Nickleby. In 2003, he appeared in the Richard Curtis comedy Love Actually, and in 2004 alongside Al Pacino in Michael Radford's The Merchant of Venice. We've also seen him as Mr. Bumble in the BBC's Oliver Twist.
For what we are about to receive, may the Lord make us truly thankful.
Alan Yentob needn't have worried about shelling out for 3 episodes of Rab C. Nesbitt. The show ran for 52, proving that good comedy works in any language.
8 series is a very long run. The public have got to have tremendous affection for something to keep switching it on again and again.
Doesn't matter how tame you get, your willies still have it seen.
It got into the hearts of people. And when it was funny, it was really, really funny.
Filth must be kept off the streets.
I hope you're listening to this.
I thoroughly enjoyed it.
Who the hell are you, by the way?
I'm the heebie-jeebie.
It was a fabulous show to be involved in. It was great.
Creatively, it just worked really, really well. It was a kind of coming together of Ian's writing, Gregor's acting and Colin's directing, and they were all firing on all 4 at the same time.
But one thing viewers always wondered about Rab C. Nesbitt was, where did the sea come from? The answer can be found in John Huston's film Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Humphrey Bogart's character was called Fred Dobbs, and he goes a bit mad. He starts talking to himself, and he said, and one time he's stacking his gold, and he's going, nobody makes a monkey out of Fred C. Dobbs. And I thought, oh, suddenly he's put a C in there because he's got money. So I thought, well, Rab Nesbitt, there's just missing something. I'll put a C in there, and that was it. You know, what does it stand for? Cash, credit, capitalism, you name it.
Talking of cash, plenty up for grabs. It's the National Lottery Euro Millions draw next on BBC One. Then Sharon Stone and Kathy Bates star in film thriller Diabolique in 5 minutes.